The air inside the Franklin County Courthouse in Birmingham, Alabama, was heavy, not from the sweltering heat outside, but from something thicker, something unseen yet deeply felt. It was the weight of quiet corruption, settled into the marble walls over the decades. Everyone who walked through those tall oak doors knew exactly how things worked inside Judge Constance Harwick's courtroom. Harwick was the type of judge who rarely looked up from her bench unless it was to shoot one of her cold, hard glances over her wire-rimmed glasses. Her stare cut through lawyers as if they were mere inconveniences. She spoke in measured tones, never raising her voice, but the authority in her words crushed anyone who dared to resist her. For 24 years, she had ruled from the bench with a force no one openly questioned. Her reputation was legendary, not in plaques or framed portraits hanging in prestigious law schools, but in whispered conversations during late-night meetings at law firms and hushed warnings shared in courthouse corridors. Attorneys, especially black attorneys, understood the silent signals. If your case landed in Harwick's courtroom, you knew what to expect. An uphill battle where fairness was optional and verdicts seemed preordained. But today, that was about to change. Chapter 1. A different kind of fight. Malcolm Redding adjusted his tie as he stepped through the courthouse's grand entrance. His polished shoes echoed on the cold marble floor, each step a steady reminder of why he was there. Malcolm had been in this courtroom before many times. But today was different. Today, he wasn't just another defense attorney pleading for justice in front of an immovable wall. Today, he had something Judge Harwick never saw coming. At 48 years old, Malcolm was a seasoned warrior in the legal trenches. He had made a name for himself, taking cases others wouldn't touch, cases that seemed impossible. His reputation extended far beyond Alabama, as did his talent for dismantling prosecutions built on weak evidence and corruption. And that made him dangerous to people like Judge Harwick. As he approached the defense table, Malcolm felt her eyes on him. She hated him already, not because of the case, not because of anything he had said or done, but because he was him. He was Malcolm Redding, and he wasn't afraid. Sitting beside him at the defense table was his client, Jamal Watkins. Jamal was a man falsely accused of armed robbery, his life hanging by a thread thanks to a system that had failed him at every turn. But this wasn't just about Jamal anymore. It was about something bigger. And Malcolm wasn't leaving this courtroom until he made that perfectly clear. "Mr. Redding," Judge Harwick said without looking up from her paperwork, "you're already on thin ice in my courtroom. Don't waste my time." Malcolm's grip tightened around his briefcase, but his face remained calm, unreadable. "I'll try not to, Your Honor." Harwick smirked just slightly. "Good. I have a full docket, and I don't have time for theatrics." She turned her attention to the prosecution. Logan Pruitt, the young, ambitious assistant district attorney, stood ready. Fresh out of law school, Pruitt was eager to make his name by playing to the crowd that had protected Judge Harwick for years. "The state is ready, Your Honor," Pruitt said, casting Malcolm a smug glance. Of course they were ready. They were always ready when the case was stacked against a black defendant. Malcolm glanced at Jamal, his client's hands folded tightly in his lap. His shoulders were hunched forward, the posture of a man who had seen too much of the inside of a jail cell, heard too many promises of fairness that never came true. "We're ready, too," Malcolm said clearly, loud enough for everyone in the courtroom to hear. Chapter 2. A game already decided. The trial began, but it wasn't a trial. It was theater. And Judge Harwick was the star. Every objection Malcolm raised was overruled without consideration. Every time Pruitt stumbled, Harwick guided him gently, like a teacher coaxing a nervous student. The jury noticed. So did the gallery. But no one spoke up. No one, except Malcolm. He studied Judge Harwick. The way her lips curled with disdain when he spoke, the way she couldn't hide the contempt in her eyes. This wasn't mere bias. It was something worse, something more personal. And Malcolm had spent years preparing for this moment. Inside, his blood boiled. Not because Harwick insulted him, he could handle that, but because she made it personal with Jamal. That was her mistake. When Pruitt introduced evidence that had never been disclosed during discovery, Malcolm stood. "Objection, Your Honor," he said, his tone precise. "This evidence was not disclosed. This is a clear violation of Brady v. Maryland. I move for an immediate mistrial." Harwick didn't flinch. "Denied." Malcolm let the silence stretch. Then, softly, "To be clear, Your Honor, you're refusing to acknowledge a Brady violation?" Her lips pressed into a hard line. "I said denied, Mr. Redding." The courtroom shifted. Reporters scribbled faster. People in the gallery leaned forward. "You are dangerously close to contempt, Mr. Redding," Harwick warned. Malcolm tilted his head. "For what, Your Honor?" "Asking the court to follow the law." Harwick's gavel slammed down so hard the echo filled the room. "Enough," she barked. "One more word, and I'll have you removed." Malcolm sat down slowly. "I have nothing further, Your Honor." Judge Harwick scoffed. She thought she had won, but she hadn't seen the trap closing around her. Chapter 3: The Reckoning. Just as Malcolm's fingers brushed the evidence in his briefcase, the documentation he had meticulously gathered for years, the double doors at the back of the courtroom swung open. Two men in dark suits strode in. Federal agents. They approached the bench swiftly, flashing their badges. The room went silent. Judge Constance Harwick, the taller agent, said, "We need to speak with you immediately." "I am in the middle of a trial," Harwick replied, her voice sharp. "It's urgent," the agent insisted. For the first time, Malcolm saw fear in her eyes, just a flicker before she buried it under her usual mask. "This is highly inappropriate," Harwick snapped. "You'll wait until I've finished these proceedings." The second agent stepped forward. "We have a warrant for your arrest." Gasps erupted. Reporters scrambled. The jury froze. Harwick's face turned pale. "This is outrageous," she hissed. "You can take that up with your lawyer," the agent replied. Malcolm stood slowly, turning to face the courtroom, then Harwick. "Your Honor," he said evenly, "I believe you just denied my motion for a mistrial. But it seems this trial is no longer your concern." The agents read the charges aloud: bribery, obstruction of justice, abuse of power, civil rights violations. The courtroom was no longer hers. Chapter 4: Justice Comes Knocking. When the handcuffs clicked shut on Judge Harwick's wrists, the room was electric. After 24 years of silencing voices, Harwick was the one silenced. No one missed the irony. The jury watched, stunned. Logan Pruitt sat frozen. Reporters documented every twitch of Harwick's trembling hands. She glared at Malcolm. "You," she spat. "This is justice," Malcolm replied quietly. As she was led away, a bailiff who had once obeyed Harwick without question held the door open for her. A final indignity. And then she was gone. The courtroom was silent. The kind of silence that carried the weight of reckoning. Chapter 5: The Long Game Pays Off. Malcolm exhaled. His client, Jamal, turned to him, disbelief on his face. "I thought people like her never paid," Jamal whispered. "They do," Malcolm said. "And there's more work ahead." The courtroom buzzed with whispers. The jury exchanged glances. The scales had shifted, if only for a moment. But there was still a trial to finish. Chapter 6: A System Reclaimed. A new judge entered. A seasoned black jurist named Judge Leonard Gaines. His calm presence brought a different energy. "Your Honor," Malcolm addressed him, "given the circumstances, I move for an immediate dismissal of all charges." Judge Gaines considered the request. His eyes steady, his voice calm. "I agree." The charges against Jamal were dismissed. The cuffs were removed. Jamal's hands were free. Malcolm placed a reassuring hand on Jamal's shoulder. "You don't need to say anything," he told him. "You're free." Jamal rose slowly, taking in the courtroom that had almost condemned him. He walked toward the door, with Malcolm following. Chapter 7: The Fight Isn't Over. As they left, Malcolm knew this wasn't the end. Judge Harwick's reign had ended, but there were others like her. Still out there. Still dangerous. Malcolm wasn't done. Not even close. And if you believe justice matters, real justice, then you know this isn't where the story ends. It's where the fight begins. If you believe in holding power accountable, if you believe in justice that works for everyone, not just those who control it, then don't just watch. Speak up. Be part of the change. Like, comment, and subscribe. Because this fight is far from over.